Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking into some really interesting ideas about relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to be going through this blog post called Pasted Text.
Okay.
It's written by this guy, John, who considers himself a shamanic practitioner.
Interesting.
So he kind of brings together these like ancient spiritual practices with a modern way of thinking about things, and
Yeah.
it should be interesting. I mean, I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
What really caught my eye right away was how he kind of redefines what we think of as relationships. It's not just about romantic partners. He's
Yeah.
talking about your relationship with yourself, with your coworkers, with nature, with like the whole world even.
Whoa, that's huge. Like every interaction is suddenly a relationship.
Exactly.
So then it's like, okay, well, what makes a relationship thrive? And you're not going to believe this.
What's that?
He argues that like the ideal dynamic isn't necessarily this like equal partnership that we all think about. He thinks that maybe it's more about the feminine energy leading and the masculine serving.
Oh, no, that might sound a little controversial.
Totally.
But he's not talking about like dominance or one being better than the other.
Right.
He's actually looking at these patterns we see in nature.
Oh.
Think about like a beehive.
Okay.
You got the queen bee.
Right.
She's not like bossing everyone around, but she's essential, right?
Right. She's crucial to the hive.
Exactly. And all the worker bees, male and female, they're using their strengths to support the whole thing.
I like that analogy. So, like, how would that even apply to, like, regular human relationships?
Well, that's the thing. It applies to all of them. Doesn't matter about gender identity or sexual orientation. Like you could have a woman CEO leading a company,
Yeah.
or you could have a same-sex couple where one partner is just naturally more nurturing.
I see. It's like those energies are there no matter what. Have you ever, like, noticed that in your own relationships? Like, in your family or even at work?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that kind of leads into what John thinks is at the root of a lot of relationship problems today.
Which is?
This whole idea that men are in charge, that model we've been operating under for so long.
Oh, gosh, tell me about it. It's like that old dynamic just keeps hanging around.
Well, yeah, to understand it, we kind of have to look back at history. We've had these patriarchal systems for centuries where men held most of the power.
Right.
And that's influenced everything from our laws to what we believe about men and women.
Wow. So he's basically saying we need a whole new paradigm then.
That's exactly what he's saying.
Okay, so what's that look like?
Well, he talks about women supporting each other
Okay.
and men contributing their strengths to serve the feminine. And he uses this really bold analogy. He says it's like women treating men like horses, giving them clear instructions and then rewarding them or giving consequences.
Wait, really? That's something else.
It is, isn't it? But when you think about it, it's all about clear communication, right?
Yeah.
Understanding each other's needs, appreciating what everyone brings to the table.
So it's about way more than just who's in charge.
Exactly. He thinks that kind of understanding can lead to a much more harmonious and fulfilling relationship.
Okay, so it sounds like he's saying this shift could affect way more than just our personal relationships then.
Oh, absolutely. He thinks it could impact everything.
Like what?
How we use resources, our economic models, the way we do politics, healthcare, education, even the environment.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is, right? He thinks if we embrace this new paradigm, the way women naturally tend towards compassion and sustainability, that would lead to better decisions for everyone.
It's like he's painting this picture of a utopia then.
He is, kinda, but he's realistic too.
Okay.
He knows we've got a lot of baggage from the past,
Yeah.
between men and women.
Yeah, definitely some wounds to heal there.
Exactly. He says we got to address all that before we can really move forward.
It makes sense. It's like he's saying we have to fix things on a personal level too, not just out in the world.
That's a huge part of it. He even brings it back to that relationship you have with yourself.
Oh, right, the internal one.
Yes. He says that masculine-feminine dynamic is playing out inside each of us too, and finding that balance internally is like the key to creating harmony in all your other relationships.
It's kind of like he's saying we have to listen to our intuition more, like let our heart guide our head.
Exactly. It's about tapping into that ancient wisdom that so many spiritual traditions talk about.
Right, like we already have the answers inside us.
He really believes that.
Oh. This is a lot to think about. I wonder if we're ready for all this, like as a society.
Me too. It's a big question.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep exploring all this in the next part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
Should be good.
This is a pretty radical shift he's talking about, right?
Yeah, it really is. He's not just saying we should like tweak a few things. He's talking about like a complete overhaul of how we think about relationships.
Yeah, and it's not just about changing how individuals think either.
Right. It's like he wants to transform the whole system, laws, institutions, everything.
And that gets really complicated, of course.
Mm,
But his point is, if we can get that core dynamic right,
yeah.
between the feminine and masculine,
Right.
he thinks everything else will kind of start falling into place.
It's like we're building on a solid foundation then.
Exactly. And he uses this analogy. He compares it to a leaky boat.
Okay.
All our attempts to fix things now, like getting men to be more emotional or pushing women to be CEOs,
Yeah.
he says it's like patching up a boat that's fundamentally flawed.
We're just bailing water out.
Exactly. We're treating the symptoms instead of the root cause,
And the root cause for him is this imbalance of the feminine and masculine.
playing out everywhere in our personal lives and in society.
He also talks about how we put so much energy into technology and the economy. But are we really creating a world where everyone can thrive?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's like we're on this treadmill going nowhere.
What if we put that same energy into healing our relationships, into creating a more balanced society?
Okay, so that sounds great in theory, but how do we actually make it happen? It seems pretty huge.
Well, he says women need to step up into leadership roles, supporting each other,
Right.
using their natural compassion and wisdom to guide things.
So he really sees women as the primary decision makers then.
He does.
Yeah.
But men still have a vital role to play.
Oh, okay. What's that?
He sees them contributing their unique strength in service to the feminine.
So it's not about sidelining them or anything?
Not at all. It's about using that masculine energy, the drive, the focus
Right.
to support a vision that benefits everyone. Remember that horse analogy?
Oh, yeah. Not sure I'll ever forget that one.
So women providing clear direction based on their intuition,
Okay.
and men powerfully carrying out that vision.
Okay, so I see how the pieces fit together.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic for a second. There's going to be pushback against this, right?
Oh,
It's like we're talking about changing deeply ingrained power structures.
yes, exactly. And centuries of conditioning.
He acknowledges that, though, right?
He does. And he says it's not going to be easy.
Right.
It requires healing for both men and women.
Yeah, I see.
Men need to heal from this pressure to always be in charge.
Yeah.
And women need to heal from being suppressed, undervalued.
It's a lot to unpack, but it also feels kind of hopeful.
Right. If we can pull this off,
What could we create?
he thinks a world built on this balance
Mm,
would be more peaceful, more sustainable,
right.
more fulfilling for everyone. He even points to matriarchal societies throughout history.
Really?
Yeah, that flourished because they emphasized cooperation, nurturing,
Interesting.
a deep connection to nature. Imagine if those values were guiding our decisions today.
Wow. It's really making me rethink everything. But he keeps coming back to that inner work, too. Because if we haven't addressed our own imbalances,
Exactly.
how can we help create a more balanced world?
It's like trying to build on that shaky foundation again.
So what does that inner work look like? What can we actually do?
It's about learning to listen to your heart, to trust your intuition,
Okay.
to let your inner wisdom guide you.
It sounds almost like he's saying those qualities, the ones we often associate with the feminine, they've been pushed down for too long.
And it's time to reclaim them.
So it's about cultivating them within ourselves first.
Yes.
And then letting them flow out into our relationships and our actions.
That's the idea.
You know what strikes me is how he combines ancient wisdom with modern insights.
Oh, yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
He's drawing from these traditions that have taught these principles for centuries and applying them to our problems today.
Yeah, like these themes keep popping up over and over.
Right. Interconnection, balance, the power of the feminine.
Like we're rediscovering these timeless truths and realizing they actually hold the keys to a better future.
It makes you wonder if we're like on the edge of something big.
Yeah, maybe a big change in how we understand ourselves and the world.
Like a huge leap forward.
Maybe John's giving us a peek at what that could look like. A world where we honor both the masculine and the feminine.
Right.
Where compassion and sustainability are at the forefront.
Yeah.
Where our relationships are sources of strength and joy.
Instead of conflict and pain.
It's a pretty inspiring vision.
It is. And it all starts with each of us.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah. How do we take all these ideas and actually do something?
The big question. We'll explore that more in the next part.
Okay, good. But for now,
Yeah.
let's just sit with all this for a minute.
Yeah. What stands out to you? What feels exciting? Or maybe a little scary even?
All those things at once. This has been really thought-provoking.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to keep going in the next part.
Should be good.
I'm ready. Wow, I feel like we've really gone in depth on this one.
Yeah, John's ideas are really something else.
So much to think about. Before we wrap up, let's see if we can, sum up some key takeaways for the listeners.
Where do we even begin? Well, I think that the most fundamental thing is how John redefines relationships.
Okay.
He wants us to see that there's so much more than just romantic partnerships.
Right.
Like every connection we have, from that relationship with yourself to how we interact with the world, it's all relationships.
It's like this huge web connecting everything.
Exactly. And then there's this whole idea of feminine and masculine energies.
Yeah, that one was pretty out there.
Remember, he's not saying they're tied to gender identity.
Right.
It's about these forces that exist within each of us.
Mm.
And he thinks we could create a more harmonious world
Okay.
if we shift towards a model where the feminine leads, the masculine serves.
Yeah, that's a pretty big shift.
It is. It challenges a lot of what we think about power and leadership.
For sure.
But it's not about one being better than the other.
Right.
It's about recognizing what each brings to the table.
Finding that balance.
Yeah.
And he talked about how important it is to heal those wounds from the past.
Oh, yeah. Both individually and collectively.
Like, we need to look at how both masculine and feminine energies have been suppressed.
And find ways to reclaim them, to let them flourish.
So it's about more than just changing the system. It's about changing ourselves, too.
He's calling for this deep inner transformation.
Yeah, it's about looking at our own beliefs.
Our patterns.
Yeah.
Our biases.
And moving beyond them.
Yeah, it's about making space for those qualities that have been pushed aside.
Like what?
Intuition, compassion, creativity, nurturing, all of that.
Letting those guide us.
To a more fulfilling way of being. It's about trusting your heart, even when the world tells you to just use logic.
It's like remembering that ancient wisdom that
Yeah.
we're all connected, that balance is key.
And that the feminine holds a lot of the answers.
Wow, he really packed a lot into that blog post.
He did.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, John's ideas might seem kind of far out there to some people, but I think they offer this really powerful invitation,
Okay.
to question what we believe, to imagine new possibilities, to step into a new way of relating to ourselves and to the world.
It's about changing how we see everything almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my question to you listening is, what small step can you take today to bring a little more balance into your life?
I love that. I think that's the perfect place to end.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of relationships. Keep exploring and keep listening to your heart.